like their lives the way they are. And I think it really seems to shock him to find out that they don't always have other voices in their head and all that. I mean, I guess he assumes that he doesn't right now because he's away from his group. He probably thinks that all of them, because they're like their own collective to him, that they would have the same thing.
It is kind of an odd thing that, it never occurs to Hugh that they won't be assimilated. Mm-hmm. And it's like, he even asked them, like, why do you resist us? Like, it never enters into his head that there are people who might choose to not live that way, because he's never had a choice. Mm-hmm. This is another sort of like another awakening for Hugh of understanding that he can have a choice in this life, whereas up until this moment, he didn't have any choices. And to watch Hugh progress from this point on, it's really, really a fascinating part of the episode.
The next scene, we move on. We're in 10 Forward, or as I like to call it, Next Generation Bar and Grill.
Next Gen Bar and Grill.
I don't know. I come up with something different every time. Of course, Geordi is sitting there with Guinan telling him about Hugh. I love it because it's like that old trope from movies where people are like telling all their tales to the bartender.
Mm-hmm.
But she actually does come back with, like, wise words and interesting stories, when that doesn't always happen.
I kind of like that they left Guinan's character very mysterious. Like, no one's really quite sure how old she is. No one's really quite sure what she's done. I mean, she drops little hints about having children, about being married several times, about being quite old, and having some kind of power. But
we had the Old West episode where she was like, "Do you remember whenever you met me before?" to Picard, and he was like, "Yeah, I remember." She goes, "No, you haven't yet," or something.
Yeah,
or whatever. And
that's when she was hanging out with Mark Twain.
Yes. And so she, and she looks exactly the same, and so it's, she's just like, wow, even older than I thought you were.
Yeah.
But she's still definitely against the Borg. Full stop. So not just you, everything that him and his compatriots stand for. Get him off. This is bad. And she is baffled that several people have talked about Hugh like he is a lost child. But she hasn't really talked to him yet, so she doesn't see what Geordi or Beverly sees or whatever, or maybe some of the security people, except for Worf, because Worf. And so, Geordi tells her she should go talk to him, and maybe she'd understand. And she's just like, no, that ain't happening. But, we will find out that does happen.
I felt Geordi was doing a good job at being the voice of reason here. And again, I love Guinan's character because you don't know anything about her. She's so mysterious. But yeah, you're right. She was totally just like, why is it still here? Why haven't you killed it yet? Why are you treating it as a person? And because she's only seen the Borg in a negative light. It destroyed her home world. It destroyed her people. They captured Picard. They destroy everything they come across. So she's never seen the Borg in anything but a negative light.
And I forgot that she says that everybody's calling the kid, so she says, well, when his big brothers find out he's missing, they're going to come after. And it just conjures up, these visions of, like, a movie where this kid's getting picked on, and then his big brothers come and beat everybody up, and it would be much worse if the Borg were going to show up and get him,
Well, I mean, that's kind of like the thing about space travel, right? Is that you just don't know what's out there, and that was Q's point when he threw the Enterprise, like, across the galaxy to a different quadrant. It's dangerous out here. There are creatures and beings and races of people that you're not prepared for yet. Like, you have no clue what they're capable of, and that's the beauty and the danger of Starfleet, right? Is that you're out there to explore strange new worlds and new civilizations, to go where no one has gone before. But if you go where no one has gone before, well, then you're going to encounter something that no one else has ever seen. And so that could be either good or bad depending on who you meet there. And I think like that's kind of like the whole point is like, yeah, the Borg are scary, but guess what? Space travel is scary. But everybody here signed up for that. And it's the beauty of Star Trek to me, of they're out here exploring the galaxy and just kind of figuring it out as they go along. Even with the Borg, they figure it out and find a way to deal with them.
So then we jump to Riker telling Picard that they picked up a vessel coming that way. You know, yada yada yada. Data's explaining what it is, and then he says it's cube shaped, and then oh no, it's the Borg. It's like they don't just say, "Hey, there's a Borg ship coming this way." It takes them 2 minutes to. Feels like to get it out.
Yeah, and this comes right after the whole Big Brother comment too.
Exactly.
So he's like, oh, remember that thing we just talked about? It's happening now.
So this is more like a scout ship, like they were in. So he is third of 5, so there are only 5 people in that. So there's only Borg in that. So there's probably not very many people, Borg, whatever, in this ship either, but still, you don't want the Borg coming and finding out you've got them because they'll call the bigger cube.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is like you never want to be on any Borg ship's radar. Because the thing about the Borg is, right, they adapt. Mm-hmm. So even if, you fire photon torpedoes and you fire your phasers, eventually they will adapt and their shields will compensate. And they will just self-repair, and they will keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. So, yeah, you never want to end up on some Borg's radar.
That's something that Hugh had brought up at one point, I think it was before here, where he says that if something happens to one of them, they're just like...
They're just reabsorbed.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I was absorbed. Because I knew it wasn't assimilated, but that they're absorbed back into... I just take that as like they're used for parts kind of thing.
But it's true, like, you've seen that in other episodes where, like, if a Borg is killed and the other Borg show up, like, they'll take pieces off of them, and then that'll be repurposed. Like, nothing is wasted. Like, they'll reuse things on them. So it's like, to them, it's not like, oh, no, our comrade has died. Like, we have to have a memorial service, and we have to bury him and have a eulogy. No, it doesn't mean anything because he's just a part in the bigger thing. And so they just, oh, he's dead. Well, take off that eyepiece because we'll give it to, 8 of 10. He needs a new one, So, yeah, they don't care about their fallen comrade.
127 needs a new one.
There you go. There you go.
Hey, at least they're recycling.
Hey.
That's true. No carbon footprint for the Borg. One good thing about them.
Yeah, right. Yes. Perfect. Anyway, since they find out that this Borg ship is coming, they go over to the star in this. So they go and hide in the star's chronosphere. Mm-hmm. Because they can't be sensed there for a while. And then, so that was a short scene, so we skip back. There's Guinan. She is visiting Hugh at his cell. She's really hostile towards him, of course, because he killed people she knew and loved and people she didn't know, but, well, not him specifically, but being that we are Borg, they are all one, he might as well have. And they talk, and she's really surprised because he didn't say, you'll be assimilated. So when she says... oh, I thought I'd be assimilated kind of thing. He thinks that means she wants to be, and she says, no. Because, he doesn't get the nuance of that.
But it's interesting, too, like, to see just in this short period of time how much Hugh has progressed, mm-hmm. right? Because he, from when Geordi first came into his cell and he's like, we are the Borg, you will be assimilated. And now here comes Guinan, and he doesn't say that to her until she prompts him to be like, aren't you going to say you're going to assimilate me? And he's like, you want to be assimilated? Like, or even the whole, resistance is futile. Like, he doesn't say that to her until she prompts him to say it. So it's like, he's already disconnecting, from the Borg, only he just, like, doesn't even know it.
Right, and it probably helps not having those things repeated in his head either. Voices of it repeated in his head,
Yeah, he's starting to learn for himself and not having something force-fed into his brain. And he's starting to develop his own thoughts.
And she says to him, resistance is not futile, and that, her people were taken over to be assimilated by the Borg, but some resisted and survived. He's kind of surprised by that. So it's interesting, they're both sort of surprised by each other, by the things they have to say, and they're both learning about one another. I think it's sort of an interesting thing, because you sort of see Guinan not be as aggressive towards him as she was. She's contemplating now what might be going on, like that maybe he is becoming an individual. He is thinking for himself. He's not just blindly repeating these phrases over and over and put some tubes in your face.
Yeah, this is another great scene because, again, we see a victim of the Borg being able to confront their assailant, I guess you could say, and while Guinan expects to just come away just as angry as she was before, she comes away very differently, and she wasn't expecting that, and it really starts to make her question a lot of things. And this is a great episode for just making people rethink a lot of preconceived ideas that they had about the Borg. And it's not even that they're wrong, like in the sense of like, oh, all Borg assimilate people. Well, that's not a lie. That's true. But this episode is showing us that if you separate a Borg from the collective, the possibility of a rehabilitation exists. And they didn't know that before.
And that they can learn, because when he was in the sickbay before, Beverly talks about him being lonely. He gets that idea. So then he asks Guinan if she's lonely because she doesn't have a planet or people anymore. Because anyone that she might have known that didn't die, or anyone that would have been one of her kind that didn't die, they're just scattered across the universe.
Yeah, I found this very intriguing that, we now have a Borg talking about feelings. And he's actually kind of showing concern for how she feels about being alone.
Yeah, when he breaks out with like, oh, you're lonely, we are lonely too, like, it really shakes her up. She is not expecting a Borg to say that to her. She's just waiting for him to be like, we are the Borg, you'll be assimilated, resistance is futile. Like, she's just ready for that spiel to walk away like, I knew it. There's no way that this thing could ever change. But she comes away with a very different point of view.
He not only sort of showed some sort of compassion for her, he also was trying to say, we're similar, you and I. We don't have anyone. Lonely. And it's just like, yeah. It's like she doesn't know what to think about that, because that's not something that would necessarily ever be in their minds. It's just assimilate, resistance is futile, Borg.
Yeah, but like, if you think about, we were talking about earlier about like the Daleks and the Cybermen. I mean, like, what do the Daleks say, right? Exterminate. Like, that's like, right, that they only have a few lines, and most of it is them going exterminate. It's the Doctor. That's all they say pretty much. And so, like, you expect that when you see a Dalek, you expect certain things to happen. You expect them to say certain things. The same thing with a Borg. When you see a Borg, you expect certain things to happen or be said, and now Hugh is breaking that, and everybody's just like, whoa, everybody's just like totally shook.
That's the thing, like, I feel like that's why this show is so popular, is because it's a show about people and cultures, and even though they're not, most of them aren't real, all these different things, and it's just set in space. Sure, there's some lasers and there's spaceships and stuff, but nowadays you go see a movie that would be like, oh, it's gonna be a sci-fi movie, blah, blah, blah. Like even the new Star Trek movies. I enjoyed them, but there's a whole lot of action, because that's what people want to see, and it's like, that's the thing about Star Trek, it's not always action-packed. there's also quiet times and character studies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I go see a Star Wars movie, then I expect there to be some epic space battles, because that's what Star Wars does, right? That's on brand for a Star Wars film. So like, if I go see a Star Wars movie and it doesn't have that,